Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. Today, I will be discussing one of the most infamous figures in criminal history, Ed Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield. Gein's crimes and his fascination with human anatomy made him a notorious serial killer and grave robber during the 1950s. Let us begin with his childhood and family dynamics. Edward Theodore Gein was born on 27 August 1906 in La Crosse County in Wisconsin. He grew up in the rural community of Plainfield, which had a population of less than 700 people at the time. Gein's family consisted of his father, George, his mother, Augusta, and his older brother, Henry. George Gein, Ed's father, was a quiet and reserved man who struggled with alcoholism. His alcohol abuse often led to conflicts within the family and strained relationships. Augusta Gein, Ed's mother, was a strict and devotedly religious woman. She was deeply influenced by her strict Lutheran beliefs and had a domineering personality within the household. Augusta's religious fervor played a significant role in shaping Ed Gein's upbringing. She instilled in him a strong fear of sin and taught him that the world was inherently evil. Augusta preached that women were the source of temptation and immorality, which left a lasting impact on Ed's view of women. The Gein family lived on a farm where they struggled to make ends meet. They led a secluded and isolated lifestyle, rarely interacting with the community. The family's reclusive nature further contributed to Ed's sense of isolation and his difficulty forming social connections. Tragically, Ed Gein's father, George, passed away in 1940 due to heart failure. Following her husband's death, Augusta's influence over Ed grew even stronger, intensifying his distorted view of the world. The combination of a troubled family environment, his mother's religious teachings, and his isolation from society laid the foundation for Ed Gein's later criminal actions. These factors would have a profound impact on his psychological development and contribute to the disturbing path he would eventually take. There is no concrete evidence to suggest that Ed Gein's mother, Augusta, sexually harassed him. The relationship between Ed and his mother was complex and highly influenced by Augusta's strict religious beliefs and her domineering personality. The relationship with his brother Henry was characterized by a shared upbringing and dysfunctional family environment. While I could find some limited information about Henry Gein, it is known that he lived with Ed and their mother Augusta on the isolated farm in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Augusta Gein, their mother, had a significant influence on both Ed and Henry. She exerted a controlling and domineering influence on their lives. As for Henry's involvement in criminal activities, there is no evidence to suggest that he was a killer like Ed. However, Henry did share the burden of their dysfunctional family dynamics and likely experienced the same oppressive environment created by their mother. Tragically, Henry's life was cut short in 1944 under mysterious circumstances. His death was officially ruled as a result of a fire, but some speculate that Ed may have played a role in the incident. Psychological profile. Ed Gein is believed to have suffered from several mental disorders, with schizophrenia being one of the most prominent. Schizophrenia is a chronic mental illness characterized by a disconnection from reality, delusions, hallucinations, disorganized thinking, and emotional disturbances. Gein exhibited signs from the symptoms which likely contributed to his distorted perception of the world. Additionally, Gein's behavior suggests the presence of sexual dysfunction or paraphilic disorder. His obsession with human anatomy, especially female anatomy, and his macabre creations indicate a deviant and abnormal sexual interest. While specific diagnoses related to his sexual dysfunction are not conclusively documented, his actions and paraphilic tendencies are evident. Gein experienced profound feelings of isolation and inadequacy throughout his life. Growing up in a reclusive and socially isolated environment, he had limited interaction with peers and struggled to form meaningful relationships. This isolation intensified his feelings of alienation and fueled his desire for companionship. Gein's distorted worldview was heavily influenced by his troubled upbringing and his mother's teachings. Augusta Gein instilled in him a deep fear of sin and propagated a belief in the inherent evil of the world. Her strict religious doctrines and emphasis on female immorality shaped his perception of women as temptresses and objects of sin. Moreover, Gein's personal insecurities and low self-esteem contributed to his distorted worldview. He felt inadequate and believed he could never live up to social expectations of from healthy connections with others. These feelings of inadequacy likely contributed to his deep-seated resentment and detachment from society. The fear of women. Well, Augusta Gein played a significant role in shaping her son's psychological development. Her teachings, driven by her extreme religious beliefs, instilled a fear of women and an intense aversion to sexual desires. Augusta's strict moral code and her portrayal of women as sinful and corrupting influenced Gein's perception of the female gender as a source of temptation and immorality. Gein's fixation on his mother, combined with his fear and idolization of women, further contributed to his distorted world. Her dominance and control over his life, even after her death, fueled his desire to possess and become his mother. This fixation manifested in his crimes and the creation of a woman's suit he intended to use to embody Augusta. It is essential to understand that Ed Gein's psychological profile is complex, and these factors provide only a partial understanding of his motivations and actions. The interplay of mental disorders, childhood experiences, and environmental influences contribute to the intricate tapestry that shaped Ed Gein's disturbed psyche. Grave-robbing activities and fascination with human anatomy. Ed Gein's criminal activities included grave robbing, primarily from local cemeteries. He had a morbid fascination with human anatomy and desire to study and possess the bodies of deceased women. Gein would often visit cemeteries at night, exhume corpses, and take them back to his farmhouse. His interest in human anatomy stemmed from a desire to create a woman's suit, as I told earlier, to resemble his deceased mother. Gein believed that by wearing this suit, he could become his mother and experience a twisted form of closeness with her. His grave-robbing activities provided him with the raw materials needed to fulfill his macabre aspirations. Macabre creations using body parts. Ed Gein used the body parts he obtained through grave robbing to create a variety of macabre objects and artifacts. These creations were a disturbing manifestation of his disturbed psyche and his attempt to fulfill his desires. One of the most notorious items attributed to Gein is the belt made of human nipples. He meticulously preserved the nipples and fastened them to a belt, creating a gruesome and shocking accessory. Gein also fashioned a variety of items using human skin, including lampshades, chair covers, and gloves. These objects were often displayed within his home. In addition to skin-based creations, Gein repurposed bones and body parts to make everyday items. For example, he used skulls as bowls and made a soap bowl out of a human skull cap. Gein's macabre creations demonstrated his complete disregard for the sanctity of human life and his willingness to desecrate the dead to satisfy his disturbed fantasies. Among the notable examples of Ed Gein's creations, two stand out due to their grotesque and shocking nature. Firstly, human skin lampshades. Gein crafted lampshades using the skin of human faces. He carefully removed the skin, preserving the facial features, and stretched it over a lampshade frame. The resulting effect was a macabre and eerie display of human skin and facial features illuminated by the light within. Second, belt of nipples. Perhaps one of the most disturbing creations attributed to Gein is the belt he made using preserved human nipples. By meticulously sewing the preserved nipples together, he constructed a belt that served as a chilling testament to his depravity. These examples highlight the extreme nature of Gein's crimes and the length to which he went to fulfill his twisted desires. The discoveries of these items within his farmhouse sent shockwaves through the community and continue to be haunting reminders of his heinous acts. The discovery of Gein's crimes. The investigation into Ed Gein's crimes was set in motion by the disappearance of Bernice Warden, a local hardware store owner in Plainfield, Wisconsin. On 16 November 1957, Bernice was reported missing, and suspicions arose when a receipt from Gein's store was found at the crime scene. Law enforcement officers, led by Sheriff Arthur Schley, immediately focused their attention to Gein as a potential suspect. They arrived at his farmhouse to conduct a search and uncover the truth behind Bernice Warden's disappearance. During the search of Ed Gein's farmhouse, investigators were confronted with a horrifying sight. They discovered the remains of multiple women, both freshly deceased and long deceased, in various states of decomposition. Gein's house of horrors revealed an assortment of grisly scenes. Human skulls, bones, and body parts were found scattered throughout the premises. The remains were often mutilated and repurposed of Gein's macabre creations, such as the lampshades made of human skin. The shocking discovery of these human remains painted a chilling picture of Gein's crimes and the extent of his depravity. It sent shockwaves through the community and captured national attention due to the disturbing and unprecedented nature of the case. The revelation of Ed Gein's crimes caused immediate shock, horror, and disbelief among law enforcement officials and the local community. The gruesome discoveries made at his farmhouse shattered the tranquility of the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin. Law enforcement officers and investigators were confronted with scenes of unimaginable horror, testing their psychological resilience. The magnitude and grotesqueness of Gein's actions were unlike anything they had encountered before, leaving a lasting impact on those involved in the case. The community of Plainfield was engulfed in fear, confusion, and revulsion as the news of Gein's crimes spread. The realization that a seemingly ordinary and unassuming member of their community was responsible for such heinous acts shook their sense of safety and trust. The initial shock and horror experienced by law enforcement officials and the community would serve as the catalyst for further investigations, legal proceedings, and attempts to understand the mind of Ed Gein. The impact of his crimes would reverberate far beyond the boundaries of Plainfield, leaving a permanent mark in the annals of criminal history. Confessions and motives. During the investigation, Ed Gein eventually confessed to the murders of two women, Mary Hogan, a tavern owner, and Bernice Warden, the hardware store owner. Gein admitted to shooting Mary Hogan in 1954 and to killing Bernice Warden in 1957. Gein's confession provided crucial details about the circumstances surrounding the murders and the disposal of the victims' bodies. His admission shed light on the gruesome acts he had committed and helped investigators piece together the extent of his crime. One of the most strange and disturbing aspects of Ed Gein's motives was his desire to create a woman's suit using the skin and body parts of female corpses. Gein believed that by wearing this suit, he could physically transform into his deceased mother and experience a form of closeness and connection with her. Gein's fixation on his mother, Augusta, played a significant role in his psychological motivations. He idolized her and saw her as the abstract of purity and goodness. The creation of the woman's suit was an attempt to merge his own identity with that of his mother, blurring the boundaries between the self and the object of his obsession. The psychological motivations between Ed Gein's killings and grave-robbing activities are complex and multifaced. Several factors likely contributed to his actions. First, mother-child relationship. Gein's unhealthy and intense attachment to his mother, combined with feelings of inadequacy and the inability to establish meaningful relationships with women, fueled his distorted desires. His crimes can be seen as an attempt to preserve and possess the object of his fixation. Second, distorted view of women. Augusta Gein's teachings and beliefs about women as sources of sin and corruption deeply influenced Ed's perception of the female gender. His crimes can be viewed as a twisted expression of his internalized fear, disgust, and fascination with women. Third, mental disorders. Gein's diagnosed and speculated mental disorders, such as schizophrenia and sexual dysfunction, played a role in his motivations. These disorders likely contributed to his detachment from reality, distorted sexual desires, and disorganized thought patterns. Lastly, escapism and transformation. The creation of the woman's suit and his macabre artifacts can be seen as a form of escapism for Gein. Through these acts, he attempted to transform himself, both physically and psychologically, into someone he perceived as a more powerful, desirable, and connected to his mother. While these psychological motivations provide some insight into Gein's crimes, it is important to remember that the human mind is complex, and no single explanation can fully capture the intricacies of his actions. The combination of various factors and individual circumstances shaped Ed Gein's disturbed psyche, driving him to commit the horrifying acts that would earn him infamy. Investigation and legal proceedings. Following the discovery of Ed Gein's crimes, an extensive investigation was conducted to gather evidence and build a case against him. Law enforcement officers meticulously combed through his farmhouse, documenting and collecting the macabre artifacts, human remains, and other evidence. Witness interviews were conducted to gather information about Gein's activities, interactions, and potential involvement in other crimes. The investigation aimed to establish a timeline of events, uncover any potential accomplices, and determine the full extent of Gein's crimes. Forensic experts analyzed the evidence collected, including the human remains, to determine the causes of death and establish the identities of the victims. This evidence would be crucial in linking Gein to the crimes and supporting the prosecution's case. As the legal proceedings began, the question of Ed Gein's mental state arose. Multiple psychiatric evaluations were conducted to assess his mental competency and determine whether he was fit to stand trial. Psychiatrists examined Gein to evaluate his mental disorders, including schizophrenia, sexual dysfunction, and his overall psychological state. The evaluations aimed to assess his ability to understand the charges against him, assist in his defense, and comprehend the legal proceedings. Based on the psychiatric evaluations, it was determined that Gein was mentally unfit to stand trial. His severe mental disorders and disturbed state of mind rendered him unable to participate fully in his defense and comprehend the legal proceedings against him. Due to Ed Gein's mental unfitness to stand trial, the court made the decision to commit him to a mental institution rather than proceeding with a criminal trial. He was deemed a danger to society and in need of psychiatric treatment and supervision. Gein was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Waupun, Wisconsin. He would spend the remainder of his life in this institution, receiving psychiatric care and treatment for his mental disorders. Crimes were driven by severe mental disturbances. It also aimed to protect society from the potential dangers posed by his disturbed state of mind. It is important to note that Ed Gein's commitment to a mental institution does not absolve him of his crimes. While he was not held legally responsible in a criminal trial, his actions and the impact they had on his victims and the community remain an inedible part of his legacy. Cultural impact and legacy. Ed Gein's crimes have left a lasting impact on popular culture, becoming a significant source of inspiration for various forms of media. His case brought to light the darkest depth of human depravity and the macabre fascination with true crime. Gein's crimes challenged social norms and created a sense of unease, revulsion, and fear. The graphic details of his acts captured the public's imagination and sparked the cultural fascination with the psychology of serial killers and the horror they inflict. Ed Gein's case has inspired numerous works of fiction across various mediums, including books, films, and television shows. Writers, directors, and artists have drawn inspiration from the macabre nature of his crimes and the psychological intricacies surrounding them. Gein's case serves as a foundation for exploring themselves of horror, deviance, and human psyche. Fictional works often delve into the mind of disturbed protagonists or create narratives that incorporate elements of Gein's crimes to elicit fear and suspense. Two notable examples of adaptations inspired by Ed Gein's case are the film Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, based on Robert Bloch's novel the same name, incorporates elements of Gein's crimes into the character of Norman Bates. The film explores the themes of identity, psychosis, and the blurred lines between reality and fantasy. It became a seminal work in the horror genre, leaving an indelible mark on popular culture. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper, draws inspiration from Gein's crimes and its depiction of cannibalistic family. While not a direct adaptation, the film's atmosphere, themes of isolation, and the use of human remains evoke the chilling aura associated with Gein's actions. These examples highlight how Ed Gein's case has influenced the creation of fictional works that explore the darker aspects of human nature. His legacy as a notorious figure in true crime continues to captivate audiences and shape the landscape of popular culture. It is important to note that while Gein's crimes have been fictionalized for entertainment purposes, the real-life impact of his actions on the victims and their families cannot be overlooked. The cultural fascination surrounding Gein should always be accompanied by an understanding and respect for the tragedy and pain endured by those affected by his crimes. Following his commitment to a mental institution, Ed Gein spent the remainder of his life under psychiatric care. He was initially sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in Waupun, Wisconsin, where he underwent evaluation, treatment, and supervision. Gein's life in the mental institution was marked by a highly structured and controlled environment. He received psychiatric therapy, medication, and was closely monitored by medical professionals. The goal was to address his severe mental disorders and provide a safe environment for both Gein and others. Ed Gein's mental state was officially declared by the court as insane and unfit to stand trial. The psychiatric evaluations conducted during the legal proceedings supported his determination, highlighting the extent of his mental disorders and their impact on his ability to comprehend and participate in the trial. The legal declaration of his insanity meant that Gein could not be held criminally responsible for his actions. Instead, the focus shifted to his mental health and the need for psychiatric treatment and supervision. Ed Gein passed away on 26 July 1984 at the Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin. He died of respiratory failure due to lung cancer at the age of 77. Gein's death did not receive significant attention or fanfare. It was marked at the end of a troubled life, and he was buried in the Plainfield cemetery next to the graves of his family members. The circumstances surrounding Gein's death were relatively quiet, with no sensationalized events or controversies accompanying it. His legacy, however, continued to endure as his crimes and the impact they had on society remained a subject of fascination and study. It is worth noting that Gein's death did not bring closer to the pain and trauma experienced by the victims' families and the community affected by his crimes. The memory of his heinous acts and the scars left by his actions would persist long after his passing, forever shaping the legacy of Ed Gein in the annals of true crime. The impact of Ed Gein's crimes continues to resonate in popular culture in the true crime genre. His case, characterized by its gruesome nature and the psychological complexities surrounding it, has left an indelible mark on society. Gein's crimes challenged social norms and ignited a fascination with the psychology of serial killers and the darker aspects of human nature. The cultural impact of his case can be seen in the numerous books, films, and works of fiction that draw inspiration from his crimes. The enduring fascination and continued interest in Ed Gein's case stem from the morbid curiosity surrounding his actions and the psychology behind them. It is a reflection of society's enduring intrigue with the darkest corners of the human mind and the motivations that drive the individuals to commit heinous acts. However, it is essential to approach the fascination with sensitivity and respect for the victims and the families who have suffered immeasurable pain and loss. It is crucial to remember that the true tragedy lies with the victims whose lives were brutally taken and the communities forever scarred by Gein's actions. It is their stories that should remain at the forefront of our collective consciousness as we seek to learn and grow from the horrors of the past.